Hello and welcome to a new season of Oak Road Hatter. I'm your new host, Finley Cannon, and I'm joined by Jamie Castle and new to the podcast, Adam Driscoll. So Jamie, we'll start with you. How are you doing and how's your summer going so far?
Yeah, not too bad. Feeling refreshed and ready to do it all over again. Season, God knows number what for me, probably 24 or something. Crazy. Yeah, good summer. Some of you may have seen I was out in Germany quite a bit, following the England boys all the way, but not quite all the way. Which was, yeah, it was a pretty incredible experience to be there in Berlin and in the ground, etc. But no, my Luton hat is firmly back on now. I've had a few weeks to reset and rest and win back some brownie points, more importantly as well. So yeah, good to get going.
And as I mentioned, we've got a new signing for the podcast. We're joined by Adam Driscoll. Adam, just tell us a bit about yourself and your Luton support and your history with the club.
Yeah, of course. So I'm a third generation Luton fan, influenced heavily by my dad and my granddad as well. So I think this season is probably about my 26th, 27th, something like that. Yeah, going since the age of 6. I'm very much addicted, even watching the likes of Liam George and Stuart Douglas and people like that. I was hooked very early on. So yeah, looking forward to the new season and looking forward to having a regular chat with you guys on what lies ahead.
And before we get started, be sure to check us out on all the social media platforms and our new website, oakroadhatter.com. So we're going to get straight into things and start with a topic of conversation, we'll say, and maybe a little bit of controversy among some Luton fans, and that's the summer arrival. So at the time of recording, we've seen two new players come in. We've seen Shandon Baptiste, who's the bigger name of the two, former Brentford player, and also Ruel Walters. So Adam, what's your thoughts on the two players we've signed? We'll start with Baptiste.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen him in the flesh or too much in pre-season personally, but from what I gather, he's a bit of an all-action midfielder. We obviously I've going to really struggle to replace Barkley in terms of that quality. I think that's a given. But Baptiste, if we can keep him fit, good pedigree, last few seasons in the Premier League, and seems to be kind of that physical presence that maybe we need in the Championship, and perhaps we don't have a midfield at the moment. And then Walters, versatile, young. I think he's probably ready now. I think he probably will have to be thrown in, and we'll come on to why in a bit more detail later. But the ability to play right back or right wing back and right centre half seems like a really good prospect, and probably someone that we'll end up selling on to a bigger club, let's say, for hopefully a decent profit in a few years' time after a bit of success with us as well.
And Jamie, do you share those opinions on Baptiste? First of all, who's likely to be the player that goes straight into the starting lineup?
Yeah, definitely. I think they're both very Luton Town signings, but for two different reasons, right? You've got Baptiste, who probably is the victim of Brentford's successes in recent seasons, and also had a few injury issues that hopefully we can resolve and get back playing football. I think he's someone that maybe has sort of fallen out of love with the game a little bit in the last few years, not been able to play consistently, and definitely has the quality, right? I mean, you don't stay in that Brentford squad for the number of years that he did without having the quality on the ball. And I see for me probably more the Lukonga replacement, someone that can receive the ball in tight spaces, turn and drive the ball and try and get us up the pitch in transition. Whereas Barkley was obviously the technician, the master on the ball, etc. last season. I think Sambi, we missed him really as that driving force in midfield, and I see Baptiste as an almost identical replacement for that, and probably obviously clearly not quite as good on the quality spectrum given how good Sambi was. Clearly he's ended up at Sevilla now this season, so that shows how good Sambi was. But certainly for the Championship, a very, very good midfielder, and I think someone that certainly adds quality to that midfield. So very happy to get him on a free. And then Walters again, the different side of the spectrum, someone that clearly has enormous amounts of quality, someone that reportedly Arsenal wanted to keep, but wanted first team football, very much that Mengi-esque signing of last season. And I mean, God, if he has even half of the impact that Mengi has, then we've got some player on our hands. Great age at I think 19, which I think you forget how young that can be, right? Where we're looking at Joe Johnson on the other side of a similar age, and I mean the experience that Waters has had playing at PL2 fairly consistently, being on Europa League and Champions League benches, should certainly serve him well going into this season. Again, trying to not demand too much from him early on. I think a bit like Mengi should hopefully come into it fairly gradually, and I think second half of the season will really impact. But I know we'll come on to the outgoings, but with Gabe Osho leaving, it's a like for like replacement and probably has a higher ceiling at this point. Obviously, we'll wait and see, but just the initial expectation is that his ceiling's higher.
And we'll talk on those outgoings. You mentioned Gabe Osho there. I think we were all quite surprised to see him go to Auxerre in France. More, not that we were that surprised to see him go because we were all aware that he was out of contract. But the club had said they were trying to renegotiate something, but obviously were unsuccessful. But what were your thoughts when you did see where he was going?
For me, it was a very strange move. It's top flight football, right? It's the French league, and I think sometimes the French league is probably a bit underestimated. Sometimes call it a bit of a farmers league because PSG win it 9 times out of 10. But I mean, look, we're in a situation where Man City are winning it 9 times out of 10. So I guess we're not really ones to talk. So yeah, slightly weird move. Auxerre looks like a gorgeous place, so probably an upgrade on Luton, the town, right? So you can't really complain too much on that. But yeah, I mean, wish him well. Top flight football, probably a view to want to try and get into the Nigerian national team, and he might think that if he's second tier, then he might not really get a look in. He may want a slightly different challenge. So yeah, I mean, would I have liked to keep him? Yeah, of course. I think he was probably the most improved player in that championship season last time out in terms of where he came from and where he got to. Showed himself to be capable at Premier League level last season, so would definitely have contributed this season for us and would have started. But obviously opted to move on and wish him well. And as I said, I think Waters is definitely a like-for-like replacement with probably lesser impact day one, but a much greater impact going forwards.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Osho, isn't it? You think, that lure of playing in the top flight in France, and also it's a really unique opportunity that probably won't come up again in his career. And I think there's reports that he signed a 1-year deal, so clearly it's enticing enough for him to take that chance and make that move. But yeah, I mean, it gives us an opportunity as well to freshen things up a little bit. Really good player and really good for the championship. I think probably not irreplaceable from my perspective, but we wish him all the best, and I'll certainly be keeping an eye out and seeing how much game time he gets and if he can get any of those trademark goals from centre half.
And we'll talk a bit more about those departures. Obviously, the one that everyone was talking about last season, the main man for Luton last season, he's gone now. So Ross Barkley's left for Aston Villa. I think it's a good move for him personally. Villa are a club that are very much on the up and have got a lot of momentum under Emery. So what were your thoughts, firstly, on the move he's made, but also on the price tag that he brought in, Adam?
Yeah, I mean, the price tag, I think us as fans would say he's worth more than we got, right? But essentially, it sounds like what we've got is a fee that covers his wages for the duration of the contract he signed. It was probably inevitable when he signed that it had, if we got relegated, he would go. So in an ideal world, if we could control things properly, you'd want 10, 15 million pound easily. Obviously, that's just not the way it's panned out. So yeah, I mean, we take whatever it is in terms of the fee. I think about £5 million. But it's a great opportunity for him. I think he'll get appearances in all of those competitions, Premier League, Champions League. He may not be that starter, but for him, it's kind of towards the end of his career back in the Champions League, and an opportunity to show a few clubs like Chelsea what they kind of missed out on as well. So yeah, it'll be be an interesting watch, kind of watching him in the Prem again this season.
And I think also for him, I mean, had he not been at Luton Town last season and had he been playing for Villa, he would have been in that England squad come June. I think there's no debate on that. He would have been probably the first choice to replace or to sort of like be in there rather than Trent in midfield and Gallagher, etc. So I think he probably sees that and backs himself. Okay, he's obviously coming towards the latter stage of his career, but that still doesn't rule him out of the World Cup in 2 years' time. And good luck to him. I think he definitely has the quality to be in that midfield for England. We certainly lacked that forwards penetration and sort of trying to find sort of the wide players and Kane in Germany this summer. So I think he certainly would have added to the squad, but the fact that he was playing for Luton Town meant that he didn't get a look in, and clearly that's a debate for another time whether or not that's right. But I think that move to Villa just opens up that door for him, and I think it's been a summer of change for Villa in that midfield. Obviously, they've lost Douglas Luiz, but they've signed probably 3 or 4 midfielders. You've got Anana, is it? Valencia, I think, from Juve. I'm probably remembered his name there. Plus, obviously Barkley. I think they've got a couple others. So they've quite clearly refreshed their midfield, and he's got every chance to impact that midfield. And I think I would not be surprised come November, December, he's probably got one of their starting spots.
And in terms of the players that have left the club, we've obviously mentioned the 2 key players in terms of contribution to the team last season, but there's also been a couple of, we'll call them Luton cult heroes who've been with us for quite a significant amount of time that departed the club as well. Obviously, Luke Berry's joined Luton 2.0 with Nathan Jones at Charlton, who've also signed Chicken George. And then Dan Potts has left, and as at the time of recording, hasn't secured a club as far as I know, but I'm sure there'll be a few sides sniffing around for him. Obviously, they both contributed a lot to the club in their times here, including, I mean, for Potts, he came on in that playoff final and was key for us. And then Berry's popped up with a couple of goals in the Premier League as well. So what are your thoughts on those final 2, well, along with a couple of others as well, but those 2 in particular, Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, Luton 2.0 for Berry's a great move. I think he's definitely better at League One level, but I think he's going to be one of the best players in League One. And for us, he was, I think cult hero sums it up perfectly. Probably of the 2 between him and Potts, impacted our I guess success probably a bit more. I think Potts probably struggled with injuries overall and didn't quite impact the first team as much as he probably could have. But obviously both wish him well. I think every single man in that championship squad that got us promoted will be welcomed back with open arms, but whether they're Adebayo because he contributed massively, or whether it's someone like a Dan Potts who was a bit more in the background. Let's not forget he contributed right at the end with one of his kicks to seal it as well. I think what was his second or third taker, and clearly that is to step up in that monumental situation with Potts. Just thank you to him for being one of those to convert the penalties. And yeah, Luke Berry, Danny Hilton trialist as well. I think Dan Potts might have had a trialist game with Charlton, Chicken George. It's going to be interesting to see how Charlton can get on next season.
We'll move on a bit there. We've got, obviously, there's some players at the club that are back from some loans, very successful loans with McAtee and Joe Taylor, but now there's talk of them being on their way out, either permanently or on loan. It's not quite clear at the moment. Joe Taylor's the more concrete rumour at the moment. He's been linked with a move to another League One side after his really successful spell in the second half of last season with Lincoln, where he pushed them right to the brink of the playoffs in what was quite a surprise for that Michael Skabala-led team. So what are your thoughts if he is allowed to go to Huddersfield with a view to, if it's a loan, what are your thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, isn't it? Because he's shown so much impact the last season on loans, and I genuinely think there's not many players, particularly strikers in the EFL, with as much potential for their age. And you think that if we lost one of our 2 main strikers, and he wasn't at the club, he'd be someone we'd be sniffing around. So the fact we've got him and the fact that there's talk about him going out does seem really bizarre. Now, obviously, if it's a loan and it means that we can get someone else into the squad that maybe has real championship pedigree or even Premier League experience, then I'm not against it. I do feel it feels a little bit harsh on him. I think he's ready for the championship, whether it's off the bench. And yeah, it was a little bit of a shock when we saw that news come through last night that there's an agreement in place supposedly with Huddersfield. So yeah, I think it's one of those that probably we'll find out in the next couple of days. I would imagine, by the weekend. So yeah, interesting.
There's probably a slight realization on both parts, so both club and player, that he's probably fourth choice when everyone's back fit. You've got Carlton, you've got Eli, you've got Jacob Brown there, and I think I completely agree with Adam. I think he's definitely good enough to impact the squad this season. But does he just want to impact the squad, or does he want to get 40 plus games and try and score 20 plus goals? Be that at a top League One side or in the Championship. I think there's a risk that if he had, or if he does, sorry, obviously it's not confirmed. If he does stick around, there's a risk that will he only get 10 games? Will that limit his growth? He's one of the hottest prospects, as Adam said, right now in terms of that centre forward position. And does that appeal fade a little bit if he's just stuck in our squad for most of the season? And that might be doing him a bit of a injustice in terms of, well, yeah, but he can impact. Yeah, okay, Carlton and Eli and Jacob Brown are ahead of him right now, but maybe we give him a go a month or two into the season and he just absolutely smashes it. And of course that is possible, but things aren't guaranteed. And I think if giving him a move to League One, if he, as we say, as we think he can do, as we think he can get 20 goals in 40 games, if he does that, then you roll on to next summer, and obviously we'll revisit our position. Like if we get promoted this season, as we all want to, he probably moves on a permanent, because again, someone that's been a victim of our success. But if we don't get promoted, then I would probably put some decent money on us losing either Adebayo or Morris next summer. And if we do, then we've got the perfect man to come in to, I wouldn't say replace them because he's a different player, but give us an option to go a different direction next summer if that's what we choose to do. So I think keeping him fresh, keeping him ambitious and wanting more, I think is probably, when you really look at things in the light of day, probably the right choice. Now if it's a permanent, I think that's pretty stupid. So hopefully it's not.
Yeah, I was just about to say, actually, I think permanent, you'll get a lot of people, especially on Twitter, raising eyebrows and really questioning what on earth we're doing. A loan would be understandable. I just wonder whether or not, with McAtee's clearly going to go as well. So are we saying that we've got Adebayo, Morris, Woodrow as kind of like three striking options, Jacob Brown as well, Chio can play there? Are we potentially shifting out these two players to bring in players in other areas, i.e. wide men? Do you think
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
something we're doing? Is it a case of freeing up numbers as opposed to striker in or striker out, striker in?
Yeah, I think it's a different area. I mean, right now we're 6 days out from the Burnley game as we record. I think probably could survey the Luton fan base, and 99% of people would say that our strongest front three right now is Eli on that wide sort of left, Chong on the wide right, and then Carlton through the middle. And don't get me wrong, I think Eli in that wide left has done fantastically. I think he links up with Doughty really well, but he's just not that left forward. So I think if we can shift out Taylor and get an actual out and out left winger, then I think that's probably the right choice, because then you've got Chong on the right, you can play Chio on the right, but then on the left we've not really got that right-footed player that can cut inside and allow Doughty to overlap. And I think sometimes maybe Eli does clash with Doughty. I think they work well, but they could take up the same spaces occasionally, which is not what we want. So I don't think if we let Taylor go, we'll get a number 9. I think we'll get a wide forward, sort of a more out and out left winger.
We briefly mentioned McAtee there. he's been quite heavily linked with a few clubs. Bolton are the one that are strongest, I believe. Um,
Mm.
I think it's been a tough move for him coming to Luton. Obviously, he's not had any game time really for us. He's had a few loans, and then he has impressed on the loan with Barnsley. So, if he is to go, what would you sort of expect? Sort of expect in return for McAtee, Adam?
In terms of a fee, maybe 1 million. I don't know what we spent on him. I think 1 million would be fair in my mind. But I mean, and most of that again for potential, what he can be and what he's shown so far. I think he's been a victim a little bit of our success in terms of going to the Prem. Um, and is he a striker? Is he a Woodrow type behind the striker player? I'm not really sure what he is personally, and I just think in all of those options, all of those areas, we have better options. So for me, that would be a sale. For the sake of his career, I think that would be the fairest thing to do in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a million's about right. Um, Probably could ask for a bit more up front, but I think if anything, we'll probably try and push a lot into potential, right? Like you give us 1 million now, but give us a sizable sell-on fee. I think just to touch on McAtee and Taylor going out as potentials, I think there's lots have been said about, oh, but why would you why would you keep Woodrow and not get rid of him and keep McAtee instead? I think I don't disagree that I would prefer to keep McAtee in the squad than Woodrow. I think Woodrow has obviously came up with some big moments for us last season, sort of no more than Palace, for example, away. But just from a squad building perspective, I can't see where Woodrow would go to in terms of someone that would take his wages, someone that would pay a fee for him. So it's just a factor of look, just because we can get a decent fee for McAtee, because we can get a decent loan for Taylor, that's just the way it's got to be. So I think it's more of a case of just sort of let him sort of coolly see out his contract a little bit.
And obviously, there's a lot more to touch on when it comes to new arrivals that we're looking to bring in. And Edwards has said they're looking to bring in one or two players ahead of the Burnley game. Um, Obviously, at time of recording, it's Tuesday evening. We've not seen anyone come in. We've seen a nice Hawaiian shirt or co-ord set, but that won't play great on the pitch. But what would you be looking to add to the squad in terms of the players that could potentially come in, Jamie?
Well, I think if you had asked me a few weeks ago without sort of knowledge of Taylor and McAtee leaving, then I would have said, well, I think probably minimum one centre half and one centre mid. But ideally, probably two of one and one of the other. Whether you get two centre halves and or two centre mids, I think preferably I would get two centre mids and one centre backs. I think we do have numbers there. Yes, okay, they are currently injured, but you can't suddenly have eight centre halves when everyone's fit. It's just not. It's just not how you build a squad. Um, so preferably a left-sided one. I think on the right we've got Burke, Walters, Holmes can play there, or probably although probably better in the middle. Mads and Mengi can play there, albeit probably better in the middle. You've got the middle sorted. I think Mengi obviously it's his shirt to lose. As long as he stays fit, he'll play 46 games. But you've got Anderson behind him, you've got Holmes behind him that can play as well. Whereas really on the left, you've only really got Amari, and okay, the names I mentioned can play on the left, but that's not their best position in that back three. So having a left side of centre half probably is my preference. And I know they're very elusive right now, but well, they are elusive. But one went to Norwich on the loan, which we probably could have got, which is frustrating. Centre mid, we've got Baptiste. Obviously, is a starter. Then behind him, you got Nakambo, albeit injured. Pelly, albeit sort of probably a backup. Clicker, I think, probably starts alongside Baptiste, albeit you could improve upon him. So definitely one to replace Barkley in there, but possibly two. I think there probably is room for two when everyone's back fit. Um, and then yeah, I mean in terms of that forward role, we don't need one as we sit here today. But with the impending departures probably of McAtee and Taylor, then I wouldn't want to see them both go and not bring someone else in. So you're probably talking minimum three, ideally four, but you probably could even see up to five players come in between now and the end of August.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in terms of the positions. Obviously, I think I would like to see a couple of centre backs, and that's purely because of our injury record is pretty woeful in that area. I look at what we've got right now. We've got Mengi, Holmes, Walters, Joe Johnson can play there as well, but obviously there's a lot of pressure on him if you're throwing in him starting every league game at the moment. We've lost Osho and Potts. Lockie is obviously not available. Anderson, Burke, and Bell all out injured. I kind of have long term doubts over Burke's fitness, right? So, I looked earlier on and he's done 27, 20, and 22 over the last 3 seasons in terms of league games. It's not really a lot. So that makes me wonder, it's all well and good we sit here and say, yeah, but we're going to get Anderson, Bell, Burke back. How are we going to keep them fit? So for me, I'd like to see a couple of centre halves and really make sure we're covered in that area, not put the pressure unnecessarily on Johnson and Walters, and certainly a centre midfielder. We mentioned the guys earlier on that we've lost. Baptiste does replace Lokonga, I think, as Jamie said. But we definitely need another body, potentially even two in there if we can. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. I think that week or so that Edwards quoted has obviously been and gone. Being really interesting to be a fly on the wall and know who we've missed out on potentially. But yeah, clearly the areas of strengthening are very evident. So fingers crossed we can get something done by Monday night.
And on that centre back issue, obviously with the significant number of them that are injured at the moment, we have been linked in the last day or so with Cardiff City's Mark McGuinness. Obviously, there's a £10 million price tag supposedly on that, which seems like a lot of money for a Cardiff defender given how they played last season. But would you be willing to pay that for him, Jamie?
Not 10 million. No. I think he definitely adds to the defence, right? I think argument whether he's an improvement on what we've got. Maybe some players, maybe not others. But I think for me, as much as we are desperate right now for centre half, and maybe my answer would change on August the 30th, but I don't see him being £10 million better than what we've got, and I think you have to take that into account. Is he £4 or £5 million better than what we've got? Yeah, probably you pay it and go from there. But yeah, I wouldn't want us to be stupid and just pay crazy fees when I think that would be really frustrating knowing who has gone. I mean, just today, Callum Doyle's joined Norwich and Harry Souttar's joined Sheffield United. It looks like Alfie Gilchrist from Chelsea going on loan to Sheffield United as well. So you've got three options right there, albeit loans. And I know the club might not want to do loans, but you just got to stick your name out and just try and get someone and not be forced into paying £10 million for someone that may or may not have been your first choice. I mean, someone that I've always wanted actually in the last couple of years, albeit it's played right back a lot of the time. So again, we don't want to be dragged into that situation where you're playing a full back at centre half, but he was actually a centre half in terms of his academy life was Herver, who's obviously a Wolves player but on loan at Stoke. I think he's played right back in a four, but he is a centre back by trade. That's what his youth upbringing was, is a centre back. So playing on that right of a free, okay, goes against what I said in terms of wanting the left sided, but I think he'd do really well in there, and it seems like he's available. I think someone that was linked with Sheffield United on the loan. Wolves probably would sell for an okay fee and probably less than £10 million as well. So if we're buying Mark McGuinness for £10 million, I'd probably rather pay a lower fee for Herver if that's possible. So I certainly think there's better players out there or equal players out there that are available for much less.
Yeah, I think McGuinness is one of those, clubs know we have money, and they also know we haven't spent any so far. So I do wonder whether or not their valuations are inflated because we have that parachute payment money. If it was me, McGuinness, I don't know a lot about him. I'm not going to sit here and say I do, but there's clearly someone there from Arsenal Academy, good age, good height, a lot of potential. Maybe we could do a deal at 5 or 6 million with some add-ons if we were to get promoted again, something like that. that would to me be a kind of a fair deal. And Jamie mentioned some of those names around, who we may have missed out on. The one I was screaming for early doors was Tanganga. I think Millwall picking him up on a free is just incredible business. You know, a lot like Mengi in terms of that kind of Premier League, let go by a Premier League club, young, already proven himself really as well. I was gutted, if I'm honest, to see him go to Millwall. I thought it would have been a proper Luton signing, but it's not to be. And it's going to be an interesting one to see who we can pull in that position. Before the window shuts.
I think I'll be intrigued to see what happens with these Premier League clubs that have been overseas and come back. In terms of the players that they let go now, they might be back in the UK and thinking about their youth players that have done well for them in the States or out in Japan, but may want to give them sort of a year or sell them. I think someone like a Wilson S. Brown at City, I think I think he's a more of a left back than a centre half, but quite clearly he can defend if he's in a Man City set up and just play a left back for them. I know Pep likes to play centre halves at full back, so I think there's that confidence there that maybe he could play that left side of centre half role. So that's one that comes to mind, but I'm sure there's loads out there in academies. There's loads that I know of in terms of midfielders. You've got Morton and Bajcetic for Liverpool that I would like both of them in that midfield. So yeah, over the next week, as these clubs start to return to the UK and start to review the sort of 18 to 21-year-olds that either they can move on and get fees for or loan out, I think that'd be really interesting.
We'll move on there because the other big talking point over the summer and the last couple of weeks has been the kit. Obviously, we were the last side, not just in the Championship, in the whole EFL, to announce a home kit for this season. But technically, we were the first side in the EFL to announce a home kit for this season because we're not changing from last season's home kit the club's announced. They said it's for sustainability of ease of distribution and making it easier for fans as well. So we will be playing in that kit that I think we're all big fans of and sold incredibly well last season. So yeah, what are your thoughts on us keeping the same home kit as last season, Adam?
Yeah, I think I tweeted something last week. Firstly, it's fair for us to acknowledge the decision they've made in terms of not only changing the home shirt every couple of years. I think it's a good kind of ethical thing to do, and we tend to be on that as a club. But don't tell me that decision's been made by you as a club in August, 2nd of August, when if it was in your control, you are announcing that in June and you're keeping stock in the shop online to be able to be purchased throughout summer. So, they can try and pull the wool over our eyes in terms of that decision, but clearly they've cocked up with a new home kit and they've decided to extend what we have. That frustrated me, if I'm being brutally honest. Commercially, we seem to have no control or common sense. We are, as you just said, we are the ones that release kits the latest every summer. It's never in stock when the season starts. And we are coming off the back of a season where we've been kind of elevated on a global scale. And it just feels like a massive opportunity missed not to have stock, not to have kits ready to go. So, and people will probably listen to this or watch and say, a kit's a kit, but it's about wanting the club to grow commercially as well. And that's where the frustration comes, right? We've clearly missed out on a big summer of opportunity commercially. So there have to be questions asked as to why. So that's where my frustration lies, not the fact I want to buy a new kit. It's the fact that we are failing to step up off the pitch in some areas, in line with what we've been doing on the pitch as well.
Yeah, look, I'm one of those that I get roped in and buy a new kit every season. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But I mean, overall, I just say I agree with Adam. I think it's a good choice to do if that is your choice, but it's not. That wasn't the choice of the board. Like I just say, like, don't come out and lie to the fans that it was because you want to treat or you want to sort of save fans' pockets when it isn't the case. And nothing really to add on what Adam said. I think he was spot on. I think for me, it's just overall, it seems like from listening to social media and reading through tweets that it's probably been one of the most challenging summers for 2020 in terms of fan support and concerns. I think fans are right to have their concerns. 2020 have been absolutely out of this world for us in terms of what they've done for us. And when fans voice their concern, that isn't taken away from that, because that will always be there in history. It's ingrained in history. But I just feel like the fans' mindset is changing in terms of, look, we were little old Luton. We had come from the conference. We had achieved an absolute miracle getting to the Premier League, but now we're not. Now we need to grow up. Now we've grown some hair on our legs and grown a beard and probably gained a foot in height. We're now a man of a club, or we should be a man of a club, and we are a parachute payment ex Premier League side who deserves to try and throw our weight round a little bit. That's both in the transfer market and commercially. And the kit in isolation, it isn't concerning. It's just, okay, fine, go, just crack on. If something's happened, just come out and be transparent with us. But it's just across the board with the transfers, there not being much noise or sort of communication from inside the club, and then in combination with the kit, I just think in aggregate, that does raise a bit of concern. And I think a lot of people that I've spoken to are questioning what's going on inside the club right now. And yeah, just, I think Adam said in one of the previous answers, I'd love to be on a fly on the wall, not just in that recruitment meeting, but just generally in Gary Sweet's office in terms of what is going on.
Yeah, it's a real difficult time for the club in terms of the backing of the fans, particularly on social media, where you obviously find the loudest voices at times. Um, the kit, obviously the kit, they've said that they'll look to release a new one every 2 years, but they've also mentioned the away kit. They'll be making some changes in terms of other kits that they release. Um, what are your thoughts on the sorts of things you expect the club to be doing between now and obviously the Burnley game, which is just a few days away, Adam?
Do you mean in terms of merchandise or just in terms of?
In terms of a bit of everything, really, in terms of the merchandise side of things, the signing side of things.
Yeah, I mean the merch. They've said there's going to be a new away kit, and I think a third kit may be coming out. All I'll say on that is I hope they're decent and I hope they're in stock. Uh, if you show us something this week that's not in stock, what's the point? You might as well wait until it's readily available. To be honest, obviously, yeah, it really echo what Jamie said transfer wise. It's going to be hard, I think, this week to get players in. I hope it's as straightforward as it needs to be. But clearly, we've had all this time so far in the window, and not been able to get some targets through the door. So yeah, I'd be interesting to see what we can do this week. But we've covered the areas we need. We need one of each, ideally centre half, centre mid, before we get going against Burnley, because I think really, they had a poor season last season, Burnley, but they've got some quality players, and it's going to be an extremely tough start. So we need to be up for it, particularly defensively.
And they are a side that obviously ended last season on much better form than they had for the most part of it. But before we discuss that Burnley game, we'll be taking a brief break. So when we get back, we'll be talking all things Luton versus Burnley. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter. I'm still joined by Jamie Castle and Adam Driscoll. Just before we get on with the next bit, where we will be talking all things Luton versus Burnley, be sure to follow us on social media. That's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And also check out our new website, oakroadhatter.com. Obviously, I mentioned there, we've got Burnley coming to us on Monday night. It's one of our fellow relegated sides, so it's not really a new side to be facing on Monday, but it is a Burnley managed by Scott Parker now, following Vincent Kompany's departure for Bayern Munich, which I'm sure came as a surprise to quite a few people, including Bayern Munich fans probably. Um, but they will still be quite a test as they are a very, very capable side. They've got some very talented players. First of all, we'll discuss what we can expect to see from Luton in terms of who will be in that side. So, Adam, if I could get you to predict a starting 11 now, who would you say would be in it?
Yeah, I think it'll be obviously Kaminsky will be in goal. I think you'll have Ogbene right wing back, Walters, Mengi if he's fit, hopefully, Joe Johnson and Doughty. I think you'll then have Baptiste and Clark in midfield, and then a front three of Chong, Morris, and Adebayo. That's as strong as we get at the moment, I think, and also probably our only option as well.
And we really have been hit hard by injuries still, somehow. So that defence is looking quite, I don't want to say makeshift, but it's looking light at the moment, Jamie. What can you expect from us in terms of the way we'll play in the Premier League? Obviously, we've not seen us play that much with this side in particular. I'm not sure if obviously that side won't have played together really at all, and we're quite light. And Joe Johnson's very inexperienced. Baptista's never played a league game for us, and they come off that Celta Vigo game where they lost 3-1, and there was a couple of there were some odd goals in that game. It's fair to say, the one that Pelly headed back, and then we won't go into that in detail, but there's a lot of pressure on Luton, not just internally but externally as well. Everyone will be looking to beat Luton because of how we played in the Premier League and how many people we've actually impressed in the Premier League, and we will be on Sky's coverage, so there'll be a lot of eyes on Kenilworth Road on Monday.
Yeah, it's actually. I mean, it's only game week 1, but it's actually a massive game. They're a side that we expect will be up there with us. Hopefully, we'll be up there, but based on sort of predictions and odds, etc., we expect we'll be in the fight with us for promotion. So it's an early 6-pointer, which is what you want. It's a team that certainly at home has been a bit of a bogey side in recent years. Obviously, lost both the home games in the last two seasons, and I think deservedly drew the away one last year. Maybe less so drew the one the year before. So yeah, only 2 points from 12 against. Okay, albeit was Vincent Kompany's Burnley side, but still 2 from 12. So it's a chance to try and get one over them, make an impact. I think in terms of the way we play, probably more of the same and a continuation from last year. Hopefully, better defensively and better going forwards, and that's probably simplified a little bit too much. But yeah, a side that looks to dominate the ball a bit more, but can mix it up and can go long and can go short. Hopefully, that complete all-round side at some point. It seems like going forwards we look fairly good, and defensively not so, which is a slight sort of red flag question mark if you will, but hopefully will be fixed by incomings in the next week. But let's not underestimate Celta Vigo either. I think yes, okay, we lost 3-1, but they're a top flight Spanish side. They've got some very good players. They've got players that have been at Liverpool before. I think Iglesias was at Leverkusen last year, so they've got some good players. So hopefully, relatively Burnley would pose less of a threat going forwards, albeit they've still got a very, very good set of players. They've retained most of who they had in that season where they absolutely wiped the floor with the league and were by far and away the best team in the league. Questions to be raised maybe of Scott Parker. So yeah, it's a big season for him as well. So it's going to be a very interesting game. I can see why it was picked for Monday Night Football. Hopefully we can come out on the right end and start the season on strongly.
Adam, who do you think will be key for us in this game? Obviously, it's against a bit of an unknown in Scott Parker's Burnley, but we know what he can do at Championship level. He's got promoted a couple of times before. But there'll be which players will be crucial to how we play.
Yeah, I mean, I think midfield's going to be massive, if I'm honest. Not only for our protection of our, let's say, fragile defence, but also, to allow us to have a bit of control. I know Edwards is very keen this season on developing us into that kind of more possession-based team. There's probably not much of a bigger test to start up than Burnley when you look and they've got the likes of Josh Cullen, Josh Brownhill in midfield. They're pretty good players for this level. So for me, midfield's going to be big. We're going to need a big game from Baptiste and Clark if it's going to be those two. Yeah, and just to get that control and hopefully supply that front three, because I see goals in the game. I see goals in us as well throughout the season. Obviously, the concern at the moment is can we keep them out as well? So yeah, midfield's going to be massive, I think.
And there have been some quite loud outside voices, some other podcasts that have really tipped Luton's attackers, as you mentioned, to be standout players in the division this season, the likes of Chong and Morris and Eli. What do you think will change in terms of what they can offer? Obviously, Morris and Eli were very successful in the Premier League. Chong was very good at times, but struggled in other games. Do you think he can make that step up, Jamie? Step down,
I think we
rather?
need, yeah, I mean, I think we need him to. I think there's been a lot of, as you say, outside people's bets for our player of the season, which I obviously would love him to be. I think he's certainly got the quality on the ball. Yeah, I think it will be interesting, especially with Chio at right wing back as well, in terms of Chong cutting inside and Chio running out wide. I hope he shows the quality that we paid £5 million for. I think he definitely showed it at times, and I think he grew into last season. Clearly, he stepped down, so we'll be playing against weaker defences. I think Burnley can certainly be got at that they weren't exactly the best defence last year either, were they? So hopefully he can start the season off confidently and really grow into the season and supply Eli and Carlton, because if we can supply them both, then I would not be surprised to see them both bag 15, 20 plus, and if they do, then that will go some way to getting promotion back to the Prem.
And there will be some pressure on us from inside the club, obviously from the fan base, because of the frustration that has been felt over the summer with the lack of activity just in all areas. So how important is a positive start to that game and obviously the season as well, Adam?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. I think we are, as we've alluded to, a club that teams are going to watch this season. We're not, last time in the Championship, third place was a ridiculous achievement, and then obviously to go on and win the playoffs was incredible. We're a different club now. We should have an expectation, having kept some of the players like Mengi and Doughty in the front too, to be challenging. If I'm honest, even without too many additions, I look at our squad and think we should easily be in the playoff places as a minimum. So it's hugely important we get off to a quick start. If I'm being brutally honest, I'd take a point. I think we are, we're not always quick starters to a season. And with Burnley coming to town game one, I'd absolutely take a point. A clean sheet would be lovely. So if it was a 0-0, I'd accept that as well. But I think it's really important that we do kind of knuckle down into the season and show what we're about, from the start, really.
And obviously Burnley, as we mentioned, are a very talented and attacking side for this level. Which of their players do you think will be key to the way they play, Jamie?
I'm not sure if he's back fit, but I know Kolyosho was massive in terms of before he got injured. I'm not sure his injury status. But of the ones that I know are likely going to be fit, I mean, Lyle Foster, I think, is a very good centre forward. Sorry, I think he could probably throw his name in the ring for an outside bet at Golden Boot. If Parker gets him firing. So yeah, big test for Mengi, hopefully, if he's fit and co. Will certainly cause problems. So he for me probably is their one to watch.
Just to add to that, I had a look earlier on at Burnley's pre-season, and they just finished a game in Spain against Cadiz. They had the likes of Connor Roberts, Dara O'Shea, Cullen, Brownhill, Zaruri, Odebear, but they didn't use players like Masengo, Sander Berger, Aaron Ramsey, Benson. And I think they have depth, right? As things stand right now, if the window's shut tomorrow and they've got that depth, they're going to be like well up there. For me, they're going to be challenging Leeds for number one, and this is where that frustration sits with us. We have a great 11 potentially, but I look at that depth and I think, do we have it? So there's a lot of dangerous players for Burnley, and yeah, the hope is that we get that depth as well and can show a strong bench for the season as well as a strong starting 11.
And you mentioned Benson there. It's obviously a bit of an unusual situation with him last season after he was so impressive in the Championship as they were promoted, and he just really just couldn't get any minutes last season. If Scott Parker is to utilise him and really get the best out of him as Vincent Company did in the Championship, how dangerous could he be cutting in off that right-hand side or left-hand side?
Yeah, extremely. I remember fairly vividly, what was it, like back-to-back games where he just scored an absolute peach. And bearing in mind we conceded a similar one from Rune Larson last season, it's definitely one to be wary of. So no, I think he's definitely got the quality. You've got Amdouni there as well, who appeared for Switzerland in the Euros, so clearly he's got quality. So they've got lots of technical, attacking, exciting forwards. So they're definitely going to pose a lot of threat. And if Joe Johnson does get the nod, then he's got a big performance needed from him, because he'll be put under a lot of threat, especially if Doughty has the license to get forward.
And in terms of their players, there's one more I just wanted to touch on briefly. I don't know whether he'll play. It's a bit of an unusual situation for Burnley, but it's big Wout Weghorst. Obviously, he was brought in and he's then been on a few loans out, including a loan to Manchester United, which was an unusual one. But then for Holland at the Euros, he became a very important player. Do you think he'll play against us firstly? And what threat does he pose, particularly to someone like Joe Johnson?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd personally, I'd prefer him to play than have those kind of like fluid attackers running at us consistently, because they will if they get the ball. I think if they play Weghorst, they're more likely to go a bit longer, and I think Mengi could potentially deal with him. It's a bit of an anomaly, isn't it? I imagine he's on very high wages and they're looking to get rid. I can't imagine they're looking to keep him around with the number of attackers that they've got. But as I say, yeah, I'd probably prefer to see him on the lineup than Fosters and Amdounis and all those players that are attacking for Burnley.
And just before we bring things to an end, can I just get some score predictions from you? So, Jamie, we'll start with you, and I will be keeping track of the score predictions throughout the season and sort of giving an update every few weeks on how things are going. So, Jamie, we'll start with you.
No pressure then. Well, I think there's almost no way we keep a clean sheet, and there's almost no way we don't score. So that's the basis of I guess someone are thinking. I think I'm in the same boat as Adam. I would absolutely take a point. I think it would be a well-earned big point come the end of the season potentially. We can't let Burnley get sort of 3 points ahead of us from game one. So I'm going to go Luton Town 2, Burnley 2. I think that would be a good game under the lights at the Kenny on Sky to start the season. We'll both show glimpses of Premier League attacking quality, but also glimpses of probably League One defending quality at times. So it'll be a fun game for all.
And Adam, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, so can I check? Am I allowed to go for the same, or we got to keep them different?
You can go for the same. Obviously, if you both get it, you'll be level from the opening week.
I'll keep it different just for the interest of fun. I am going to go reluctantly. I'm going to go 2-3, and as I said earlier on, I think there's going to be a lorry load of goals. The Sky viewers are going to love it as a neutral, but if I'm not going that 2-2, which I'm leaning towards, I would say we may come out on the wrong side of it purely for those defensive reasons. But happy for Jamie to get off to a start with that point, and obviously even happier if we can get 3 points ourselves.
Well,
What's your score, Finn?
I've also gone for a draw. I don't think there'll be as many goals, so I think it's going to be 1-1. Just hopefully we can just sort of look a bit more solid defensively than we did I'd say at times last season, for a lot of last season. So hopefully 1-1. And if you're listening and want to get involved, be sure to let us know your score predictions as well by tweeting us at Oak Road Hatter on obviously Twitter, or emailing in if you're doing scores between your friends and letting us know who's winning and what the score predictions have been. Before we go, I'll just plug those social media bits one more time. So if you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, it's at Oak Road Hatter. Check out our new website, oakroadhatter.com. And finally, it's goodbye from me, goodbye from Jamie, and goodbye from Adam. And I'm sure we'll all be looking forward to getting back down to Kenilworth Road on Monday night.